I want to say a few words about my father and why I believe this weekend is so important. But don't worry, unlike Lionel, I won't go on all night long.
The camera light blinks red at Clarence House. King Charles III sits in a high-backed chair, hands folded, eyes steady on the lens. It is late November 2025, though the world will not see this footage for weeks. A producer counts down on her fingers. 3, 2, 1. The king begins to speak, and the words that come out of his mouth will travel further than anyone in that room expects. My own schedule of cancer treatment can be reduced in the new year, he says. 6 words that sound like relief. 6 words that also sound like something else entirely, depending on who is listening. Buckingham Palace will later confirm what those words mean and what they do not mean. The king has responded well to treatment. His care moves into what officials call a precautionary phase. But palace officials choose not to say the word remission. They never use it. Royal watchers notice the silence around that one word almost more than the announcement itself. 2 years earlier, in February 2024, the diagnosis stunned the country. Cancer, unnamed, undisclosed, caught during a routine procedure for an enlarged prostate. The king stepped back from public duties for a matter of weeks. Then he returned, slower in pace but unmistakably present, determined to keep working through chemotherapy sessions that the public never saw. Now, almost 2 years later, the treatment is easing, and across Britain, a question starts circling that has nothing to do with medicine. If the king is recovering, why does it feel like something is shifting anyway? Quick question for you before we go further. If someone you loved got that kind of health news, would you want them to slow down or keep working exactly the way they always have? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to know, because here is what royal watchers have noticed. Reduced treatment does not mean reduced workload. King Charles, 77 years old, kept a packed calendar throughout 2025, hosting state visits for the French president, the American president, and the German president, even while undergoing chemotherapy. Royal aides describe him as the happiest he has been in years on the throne, but behind that calendar sits a parallel one quietly filling up with a different name. William, Prince of Wales, is showing up in more places that used to belong only to his father. State functions, trooping the color, international visits once reserved for the reigning monarch. No announcement explains why. No statement confirms a handover of any kind. According to royal commentators, that is exactly the point. Nothing in the monarchy moves by sudden declaration. It moves by small adjustments that nobody is asked to approve. And one of those adjustments is about to land directly on Queen Camilla. The seating chart changes first. Nobody announces it. Nobody explains it. A royal correspondent simply notices, scanning a photograph from a 2025 state engagement, that the positioning looks different from the year before. William stands closer to the center. Camilla stands a half step further back than protocol would normally place a reigning queen. It could mean nothing. Seating charts shift for 100 boring reasons. Security routes, camera angles, a last-minute change in who arrives first. But royal watchers do not deal in nothing. They deal in patterns, and patterns are what they claim to be seeing. Officially, the story stays simple. Buckingham Palace describes a working monarchy carrying on as normal. King Charles attends. Queen Camilla supports him. William represents the crown when needed. That is the version released to the public, repeated in press briefings, printed in court circulars without a hint of drama. Privately, according to multiple royal commentators and biographers, a different picture is forming. Charles, even with treatment easing, is not the same physical presence he was in 2023. Long-haul travel gets handed to William more often. Major engagements that once required the monarch's signature now list the Prince of Wales instead. None of this breaks any rule. The Councillors of State Act already allows William to step in for his father during travel or illness. What raises eyebrows is not that he steps in. It is how often and how naturally those substitutions are starting to happen. Catherine, Princess of Wales, completed her own cancer treatment in 2024 and returned to public life with noticeably increased visibility through 2025 and into 2026. Together, William and Catherine now headline royal tours that once would have included the king and queen as the central figures. Crowds gather for them specifically. Cameras follow them first. Camilla still appears. She still smiles for the cameras, still completes her own schedule of patronages and engagements. Her title has not changed. Her role on paper has not changed. But royal biographers have started asking a sharper question in print. When the institution quietly leans toward the next generation, what happens to the people who built their place in the one before it? One palace insider, speaking anonymously to a British tabloid, described the mood inside the household in 3 words: everyone is adjusting. Adjusting to what, exactly, nobody on the record will say. What nobody disputes is this. A senior royal aide, asked directly whether the Queen's role was shrinking, gave an answer that satisfied no one. Her Majesty's diary remains full, the aide said. Full is not the same as central, and the difference between those 2 words is where this story actually lives. The 6th of May, 2023, Westminster Abbey. Camilla kneels as the Archbishop of Canterbury lowers the crown of Queen Mary onto her head. Bells ring outside. Inside, the woman once treated as the most controversial figure in modern royal history becomes Queen Camilla, full stop. No qualifier attached to her name for the first time in nearly 2 decades. It did not start that way. In 2005, when she married the then Prince Charles, the palace gave her the title Duchess of Cornwall, not Princess of Wales, not Princess Charles. The choice was deliberate, a calculated distance from a title still carrying the memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, who had died 8 years earlier. Camilla spent the next 17 years building public tolerance, one engagement at a time, working through a level of public hostility that few royal spouses in modern history have faced. By 2022, Queen Elizabeth II made a decision that surprised even some inside the palace. In a statement marking her Platinum Jubilee, just months before her death, the late Queen wrote that it was her sincere wish that Camilla be known as Queen Consort when Charles became king. That single sentence settled decades of speculation in one stroke. When Elizabeth II died in September 2022, Camilla became Queen Consort automatically, by law and by precedent, the same way every consort before her had. The coronation in May 2023 dropped the word consort entirely. Buckingham Palace confirmed she would simply be known as Queen Camilla going forward. A full institutional rehabilitation, completed in public, broadcast to the entire world. But here's the detail that royal historians keep returning to. Camilla's title at every stage has been borrowed from her husband's position. Duchess of Cornwall because Charles was Duke of Cornwall. Queen Consort because Charles became king. Queen Camilla because the coronation made it so. None of it was hers independently. Every upgrade arrived because of where Charles stood, not because of any independent claim to the throne. That detail matters more now than it did in 2023, because a consort's title is permanently attached to the reigning monarch. The day the crown passes to William, by law, by the same mechanism that made Camilla queen, her position changes too. Not stripped, not removed by punishment, simply recalculated, the way it has always worked for every queen consort in British history before her. The question royal commentators are now asking is not whether that recalculation happens, it always does. The question is how the years leading up to it are managed, and how visible Camilla remains while the institution quietly turns its attention toward whoever comes next. Trooping the Color, June 2025. Horse Guards parade fills with crowds, 12 people deep. The cameras find King Charles on his horse, steady, present, exactly where tradition says he should be. But seconds later, those same cameras swing toward William, Prince of Wales, riding in a position of command that royal commentators note has expanded year over year since his father's diagnosis. It is a small detail. It is also the kind of detail that royal biographers build entire theories around. William turned 43 in 2025. He has spent the last several years assembling what insiders describe as a leaner, more disciplined royal operation, built around the Duchy of Cornwall's finances, modernized charitable structures, and a noticeably tighter media strategy than his father ever ran. Friends and aides, speaking to British outlets, describe him as deliberate almost to a fault. Someone studying the institution, he will eventually inherit the way an engineer studies a structure before deciding what needs reinforcing and what needs to be torn out. Catherine, Princess of Wales, returned from her own 2024 cancer treatment, changed, according to people close to her, more selective about her public appearances, but more commanding when she does appear. Together, the Wallaces now headline events that draw crowds rivaling anything King Charles or Queen Camilla generate. Their 3 children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, appear more frequently at official engagements than royal children typically did at the same age a generation earlier, a deliberate choice, according to royal commentators, designed to build public familiarity with the line of succession years ahead of schedule.
A lot of food as well. Yeah, so
How much do I put in?
No, that's fine. We send throughout Ramadan one more.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
None of this requires King Charles to step back. William holds no additional formal power beyond what councillors of state already permit. But formal power and functional visibility are not the same thing, and royal watchers increasingly argue that the second one is shifting faster than the first. A senior aide to the Prince of Wales, asked about reports of William taking on more responsibility, gave a careful answer. "The prince supports the king in any way that's needed," the aide said. Supportive language, open-ended. The kind of statement that confirms nothing and rules out nothing at the same time. What is harder to dismiss is the math. Engagement records published by royal correspondents show William's public appearances rising year over year since 2024, the same period covering his father's diagnosis and treatment. Camilla's appearances, by contrast, have stayed roughly flat. Charles's own numbers dipped sharply in 2024, recovered through 2025, and now sit just below where they stood before his diagnosis. 3 lines on a graph, 2 of them rising, 1 of them not. Royal commentators say that graph tells a story the palace has never once put into an official statement. There is no document sitting in a vault that lets King Charles simply walk away from the throne. No form to sign, no quiet handover at Clarence House over tea. The British monarchy does not work that way, and it has not worked that way since 1936. That year, Edward VIII wanted to marry Wallis Simpson, an American divorcee the government refused to accept as queen. He could not simply step down. Parliament had to pass an entire piece of legislation, His Majesty's Declaration of Abdication Act 1936, before the throne could legally pass to his brother, George VI. A constitutional process, recorded, debated, voted on, not a private decision made behind closed doors. That same legal reality applies to Charles. If he wanted to abdicate today, in 2026, the same machinery would need to move. Parliament, legislation, possibly equivalent action across the 15 other Commonwealth realms where Charles is also head of state, each one needing to recognize the change under their own constitutional arrangements. It is not impossible, but it is slow, public, and almost impossible to keep quiet, which is precisely why royal historians say an Edward VIII-style abdication is not what anyone close to the palace is actually predicting for Charles. There is a far simpler path, and it requires no legislation at all. Succession, under the Act of Settlement, 1701, happens automatically, instantly, the moment a monarch dies. No vote, no ceremony required to make it legal. William becomes king the second his father's reign ends. Full stop. By operation of law older than the United States itself. There is also a middle option that gets far less attention. The Regency Act 1937 allows for a regent, almost always the next in line, to take over royal functions if the monarch becomes permanently incapacitated without the crown changing hands at all. Royal historians point out that Charles's current arrangement, leaning on William through the Councillors of State framework during periods of treatment, sits well short of a formal regency, but it occupies the same territory, a king who keeps his crown while someone else increasingly carries the weight of it. So the real question was never whether Charles will dramatically hand William the throne over dinner. Legally, that fantasy does not exist. The real question, according to royal commentators watching the pattern build year over year since 2024, is something quieter and harder to pin down with a single law or a single statement. How much of the job can shift to William before the title itself even needs to move? That is the question Buckingham Palace has never been asked directly in any press briefing. And it is the question that brings Queen Camilla's position back into focus, because whatever answer the palace eventually settles on for Charles applies to her twice over. A royal tour itinerary changes twice in 6 weeks. That detail alone would mean nothing. Itineraries shift constantly for weather, security, and a dozen invisible reasons nobody outside the palace ever hears about. But royal correspondents covering the 2025 Commonwealth visits noticed something specific. Both times the schedule changed. The adjustment moved Queen Camilla's joint appearances with William and Catherine further apart, not closer together. Nobody at Buckingham Palace called it a demotion. Nobody used that word at all. According to a palace statement at the time, the changes reflected operational logistics, a phrase vague enough to mean almost anything and specific enough to shut down further questions in a press briefing. Royal biographers reading the pattern call it something else. They call it the quiet reduction theory, and it works exactly the opposite of how most people expect institutional power to slip away. There is no headline, no statement announcing a change in status, just fewer joint photographs, fewer moments where Camilla stands beside the future king and queen at the same event, in the same frame, in front of the same cameras. Compare two photographs, 18 months apart. In the first, taken in early 2024, Camilla stands directly beside William and Catherine at a state reception.
Oh God, I hate it. It's going everywhere. So nobody got trained.
Close enough that all three fit naturally in one frame. In the second, from late 2025, Camilla appears in a separate grouping, several feet removed, technically present at the same event, but visually disconnected from the three people increasingly treated as the monarchy's future. A royal photographer who has covered the family for over a decade, speaking anonymously to a British paper, put it simply, "You start to notice who gets positioned next to who. It's not an accident. Nothing at these events is an accident." That is the uncomfortable part of this theory. Nobody can point to a single decision and call it proof. Seating charts get redrawn for legitimate reasons every single time. Camera angles shift because of stage layouts, not power plays. Any one of these moments, taken alone, explains itself. But royal commentators are not looking at one moment. They are looking at 18 months of moments, stacked one on top of the other, all pointing in the same direction. What happens to a queen's visibility when nobody ever has to announce that it changed? Inside Clarence House, according to a report from a royal correspondent with sources close to the household, a disagreement plays out in late 2025 over something that sounds small from the outside. A courtesy protocol decision, the kind of detail most people would never notice on television. Who walks first through a doorway? Who gets named first in a printed program? Small, almost invisible rules that royal households have followed for generations without explanation, because explaining them was never necessary until now. The report, which Buckingham Palace has not confirmed or denied, describes friction between aides serving King Charles and aides serving William, Prince of Wales, over how certain joint engagements should be structured going forward. Royal commentators are careful here because nothing about this story comes with an on-record quote from anyone inside the family. It comes from sources familiar with the household, the same phrase that has described half of Fleet Street's royal reporting for the past 50 years. What makes this particular report land differently is the underlying tension it describes. Charles, according to people close to him, wants the institution to remember Camilla's place in it, built over 17 years of public rehabilitation that nobody handed her for free. William, according to the same report, is focused somewhere else entirely, building a version of the monarchy built to survive scrutiny in the 2030s and beyond, a version with less tolerance for anything that slows down the institution's credibility with the public. Those two priorities do not have to conflict. Most days, they do not. But royal biographers argue that when they do conflict, even quietly, even just inside a private conversation about a doorway or a printed name, something has to give. Catherine, Princess of Wales, reportedly serves as something close to a buffer in these moments, according to people close to the family, the person both generations trust to keep tension from becoming public. Her own return from cancer treatment gave her a kind of credibility inside the institution that nobody questions the rare royal figure both the king's generation and the prince's generation defer to without friction. But buffers do not resolve disagreements. They only delay them. And royal commentators following this story closely say the disagreement over small protocol decisions is, in their view, a preview of a much larger negotiation still waiting to happen. A single photograph triggers 48 hours of headlines. That is how fast this moves now. A royal photographer captures Camilla standing slightly apart from William and Catherine at a 2026 engagement, and within hours the image is everywhere, captioned a dozen different ways by a dozen different outlets, each one reading the same 6 feet of distance as proof of something different. One tabloid calls it evidence of a freeze-out. Another calls it nothing more than a security rope positioned exactly where it always is. A royal commentator on television spends an entire segment analyzing Camilla's facial expression frame by frame, reading meaning into a smile that, to most people watching at home, looks like every other smile she has given a camera for the past 20 years. This is the part of the story that has nothing to do with the palace and everything to do with the public hunger surrounding it. Buckingham Palace, true to form, says nothing. No statement, no clarification, no confirmation or denial. According to people who have studied royal communications for decades, this silence is deliberate, a long-standing strategy of never feeding a story by responding to it, even when the story spreads completely unchecked. But silence creates its own kind of evidence in the public imagination.
I, William, Prince of Wales, pledge my loyalty to you, and faith and truth I will bear unto you, as your liege man of life and limb. So help me God.
He will stand, kiss his father on the right cheek, then touches.
When the palace does not deny a theory, social media treats the lack of denial as confirmation. Comment sections fill with users certain they have spotted the truth in a 6-foot gap between 3 people standing for a photograph. Royal commentary channels gain millions of views breaking down body language that, according to actual body language experts consulted by mainstream outlets, mostly shows nothing more dramatic than 4 adults standing for an official photo on a long day. Still, the headline cycle has an effect, whether the underlying theory holds up or not. Royal sources tell at least one British outlet that the palace's communications team begins discussing, internally, whether future joint appearances need clearer staging to avoid this exact kind of speculation. If true, that decision alone proves something interesting. The palace may not believe Camilla's position has changed, but it now has to manage a public that increasingly believes it has, and managing perception is, in the end, its own kind of power shift. Strip away every photograph, every seating chart, every anonymous palace source, and one piece of the story has never actually been about Camilla at all. That is the twist royal biographers keep circling back to, the one that reframes everything covered so far. The real tension inside the royal household is not a fight over Camilla's title, her photographs, or her place at the table. Buckingham Palace has never suggested removing any of those things, and nothing in British constitutional law allows a queen consort's title to simply vanish by decision. The real tension is about something bigger than any one person. It is about what kind of monarchy survives the 2030s. William, Prince of Wales, has spent years, according to multiple royal commentators, building a version of the institution designed around a smaller working family, tighter financial transparency through the Duchy of Cornwall, and a media strategy built for an audience that has already lived through Megxit, the Prince Andrew scandal, and a cost of living crisis that made every royal expense a public argument. Royal historians describe this as a generational project, not a personal one. It was never really aimed at his stepmother. It was aimed at the entire structure of the crown. Camilla, in that frame, is not a target. She is simply a symbol of the era being phased out, the same way Prince Philip's generation eventually gave way to Queen Elizabeth II's, and her generation is now giving way to Charles's. Every monarchy reorganizes itself around whoever is next. Camilla's story just happens to be the most visible version of that reorganization happening in real time, in front of cameras, during an era when nothing stays private for more than a news cycle. A future-facing planning document, referenced by a royal correspondent but never published in full, reportedly outlines what insiders call a streamlined monarchy model, a working family built around fewer senior royals, fewer official residences, and a tighter public budget. If that document is real, and Buckingham Palace has neither confirmed nor denied its existence, it changes how every photograph and every seating chart in this story should be read, not as an attack on one queen. As the opening pages of a plan for the next 50 years, a final photograph closes out 2026's royal calendar, and almost nobody outside royal watching circles even notices it. King Charles stands at the center. William and Catherine stand close beside him. Camilla stands in the frame, present, smiling, exactly where protocol places her. Nothing about the image breaks a single rule, and yet, according to royal commentators studying the full year of images side by side, something about the composition has shifted so gradually that no single photograph proves it, and only the entire collection, laid end to end, tells the real story. The monarchy is not collapsing. Nobody serious in royal circles argues that it is. It is reorganizing, quietly, the way institutions that intend to survive always do, shedding old arrangements one small adjustment at a time instead of one dramatic announcement. King Charles, even with treatment reduced, carries the weight of a reign defined by health uncertainty that nobody can predict the end of. Camilla's risk was never a stripped title. It was always something harder to point to, a slow fade from the center of the photograph, while the title itself stays exactly where it has always been. William's risk runs just as deep, in the opposite direction. He inherits not just a crown, but the job of proving that crown still matters to a public that no longer accepts silence as an answer to every hard question. Catherine stands beside him as the stabilizing force both generations have learned to trust. Their 3 children grow up faster in public than any royal children before them, groomed for an institution that may look nothing like the one their grandfather inherited. No title has been stripped. No throne has been formally handed over. Everything described across this story remains, by Buckingham Palace's own account, speculation, pattern reading, and reporting from sources the palace has never confirmed. But influence, royal historians argue, has never needed an announcement to move. It just needs time. And the royal family has nothing if not time. Generation folding into generation, year over year, photograph by photograph. What happens next, nobody outside that family actually knows. Not the commentators, not the biographers, not even, perhaps, some of the people standing in the photograph. If this kind of story pulls you in, the way power really moves inside institutions that never explain themselves, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss what comes next. And if a piece of this story stayed with you, the part about people quietly adjusting to a future they didn't choose, share your thoughts in the comments. Stories like this one have a way of meaning something different to everyone watching.